Welcome to the Fostering Longevity podcast. I'm your host, Haley Foster, and today's guest is someone whose story will land deeply if you've ever felt stuck in survival mode while trying to heal yourself into wholeness. Dana is a nervous system coach who knows firsthand what it means to live between freeze and burnout, like many of us. She spent years doing all the right things, chasing self-help, chasing success, and chasing healing, and still felt exhausted, unmotivated, and disconnected. But that all changed when she discovered polyvagal theory, and suddenly everything clicked. Her body made sense, her symptoms seemed to make sense, her patterns made sense, and from that place of clarity, she began the real work of regulating, not just reacting. Please join me in welcoming my new friend, Dana Doswell, who I just spent 5 days in Mexico with and absolutely loved her and reconnected afterwards and couldn't wait to jump on and dive into all of that knowledge that you have. So welcome and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited that some of our conversations at the retreat have actually translated to being able to record something together. That's really cool.
Yes, me too. Me too. You know, and you never know like what's going to happen at a retreat. I think our story is actually kind of funny because you were supposed to be on a retreat a year before that, which I was also on as a guest, but you didn't end up going. And then this, I guess, as you were working more on like the male-female nervous system work, which we're going to dive into, this resonated with you. What was it that actually made you feel like I need to be at this one?
I think there was a couple of things. The biggest thing was literally I'd gone through a pretty shitty breakup like 2.5 months before. And like a lot of people, I've gotten to the point where I can like see breakups as like, cool, I'm going to learn a lot about myself. I'm going to learn about my patterns. Like I'll be able to look back and, you know, probably see maybe some of like the red flags that I was missing. And one of the big things that was coming through for me was I really needed to be around healthy examples of male-female dynamics, healthy relationships. And, you know, I think like a lot of people, I don't really have anybody that is older than me, that is in like a healthy relationship around me. And so you're about, 20 years ahead of me, which was such a cool thing where I was like, oh, okay, like that's kind of how I want to be. So I need to be there. And also like the word for me this year was pleasure, and just like pleasure for the sake of pleasure, which is something I've had a hard time accessing for a lot of my life. So the kind of, relationship focus, and then just like there was this sense of like, okay, we're just gonna like have fun, that really drew me in. And I mean, I was already in this like small town in Mexico, so it was perfect. Like I was just able to jump in, and I'm so glad that I did.
Amazing. And what would you say your biggest takeaway from that week was?
I feel like I actually have two. I feel like the first one was I realized from a relationship perspective, like how little I was actually asking for, when I think about the kind of partner that I want to have. And so just like seeing the way that a lot of the men showed up at the retreat, that was a big thing for me, where I was like, okay, I actually have this tangible evidence now of what is possible. And I can actually be with someone who is more of like a match for me. So that was like a really big one that really landed. And the second one was around pleasure and having fun, and how I can definitely tend to be so over serious because I just love being serious. But there was this whole other part of me that got to come out that was just a lot of silliness and fun. And I could kind of feel, at the end of the day, like when it comes to all of the healing work, that's such a big reason why we do it, is to be able to not have to be serious all the time and to actually be able to enjoy things when they are there to be enjoyed. So I loved that.
Yeah, that's a big thing I put into my next retreat, which is happening in May. There's plenty of time for fun. And it's all women. So we could talk about that offline.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm super excited to dive in today. Let's just start at the beginning. So you describe yourself in your LinkedIn bio as a self-help junkie. I think it really resonates with me going back to even my teens and my 20s. I was always in the self-help section of the bookstore. You still find me in that section, although I don't think it's called self-help anymore. And so you described yourself as a former self-help junkie. What did that look like for you back then? And why do you think it actually kept you stuck instead of helping you heal?
As soon as you say that, one of the first things that like comes to my mind is this like obsession with biohacking, not in a good way, when I was in university. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people resonate to this. When I was kind of, orienting towards self-help at the time, it was unconsciously coming from a place of how do I use this information to control my body and get my body like to do what I want. But I didn't know that that's what was happening. And so I was, learning about like, okay, mindset, writing affirmations. Like I had a journal and I actually found them recently, and I literally have just like hundreds of affirmations written down, and it's all neat and it's so beautiful. And it was a lot of like learning about like nootropics and fasting and cold plunging and like, and a lot of this stuff. And so much of it really revolved around how can you incorporate more discipline? So I was obsessed with, Jocko Willink. Yeah. And there's this song I would listen to on repeat. It was like, discipline equals freedom, discipline equals freedom. And I literally was just so like, that would be like the tagline for my like self-help junkie days. And I look back on it now and I'm like, I have so much love for her. But number one, everything I was learning about was based on male physiology. And that is like when I really looked back and realized, I was like, oh my God, okay, that makes so much sense why my self-help years were followed by like the worst health issues I'd ever had in my life, because I truly was just depleting like my female body so much. And the other part of it was really this like underlying fear I had of my body, of my psyche, of my mind, where I kind of had this sense of like, if left to my own devices, like something bad is going to happen in my body, and I really need to like control and be disciplined and have these routines and so on and so forth. And so that is wildly stressful for the nervous system, and especially for the female nervous system, which is inherently cyclical. Like whether you're in your menstruating years or you're going through perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopausal, like we are so cyclical compared to men. So all of that was just completely suppressed, pushed down. I had no idea how to even work with my body, and that way it wasn't even on my radar. And, as I learned about the nervous system, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I learned about the female nervous system, and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes even more sense. And so I look back on those times and I'm like, I've always valued doing well at things. If I'm going to do something, I like to do it well. And that has remained as I have healed. And now it's like, oh, I can see why it wasn't working when I was trying to do it from this place of control and rigidity and just essentially based on advice for men, to now being able to do a lot of this stuff in tune with being a woman and my female hormones and my female nervous system. So yeah, that's kind of what pops to mind.
Well, it's funny you say that because, you've met Brian, who, like Jocko, comes from the military. And while I had started really introducing him to things outside of, his athletic, physical mindset, like really introducing him to more of the biohacking and the breath work, and although he's probably been doing breath work for a long time, but, really throwing in like intermittent fasting and things like that, he would be like, okay, we're going to do fasting. I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. And so I would literally operate like a mini version of him. He'd be like, let's fast for 3 days. I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. Not even thinking about what it was doing to me. And very similar to you, I grew up with this control mindset of like, I need to control everything. And I think it goes along with like this, probably not a great phrase, but like the type A personality. Like high achieving women are operating on this whole other level we don't realize. And so many people, we should probably title it this, like the podcast every high achieving woman should listen to, because I think a lot of them just still don't know that the way that they're operating on this hamster wheel and churning and churning and churning and not taking time for calm and relaxation and letting your nervous system shift into the parasympathetic is detrimental to your hormones, to your health, to your sleep, to everything. What would you say was like the first change that you made when you started to understand this?
So the first was, I would say, okay, the first big one. So I want to share this story because it is when, people talk about really cool healing stories, I feel like this is one of them. So after I discovered, nervous system polyvagal theory, at the time I was dealing with really bad cystic acne, which was like one of my, physical symptoms of dysregulation. And I, at this point I had like been on Accutane and pharmaceuticals, and I had like begun trying more like holistic supplements and working with a naturopath and stuff like that. And like, it wasn't really fully working. And one of the things that really clicked for me around the nervous system was when your nervous system is depleted and overburdened, it overburdens all of your organs. So like my liver couldn't detox properly. My stomach literally does not have enough energy to digest nutrients. And my digestive organs were actually very much in a chronic state of freeze. And so I started working with a somatic practitioner in order to begin, essentially, I think of it as like depressurizing and unburdening the nervous system. So how do we start to thaw some of that freeze? How do we actually allow the body to complete previously incomplete cycles of stress? So I had been working with her for maybe like 2 months, and I was noticing like a difference. Like I was like, wow, I'm like actually feeling my feelings now. And like, this is like helping. And then I had what I call like an organic somatic release. So we're not, using EFT tapping or breath work or sound or anything to stimulate the body. It comes like up and through the body. And I was living in Colombia at the time, actually. And I remember it was like a Sunday evening and I felt so irritated. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, I've had a great day. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I ended up just intuitively feeling like I need to put my yoga mat down. I need to like do something. And I put my yoga mat down, I put some music on, and I literally felt like something erupted like out of my body. Like I started sobbing, and yeah, it was like literally, yeah. Sometimes I think about in the olden times, if people were having organic somatic releases, we thought that they were having like an exorcism or something, because it kind of felt like it was like this big cathartic experience, but like I didn't do anything. My body just did it. And I started having all of these memory flashbacks of like I was like bullied really badly when I was a kid. I got called Shrek for years, and I felt like I literally had this like ogre imprint come out of my body. And it was like I was there for 2 hours and it was just coming out and out and out and out. And I had an image of my mom being bullied. Never talked to her about that before. And I actually called her after this experience, and she's like, yeah, that happened to me. So this like wildly like somatic, intuitive, spiritual experience, literally woke up the next day. So many of my like cystic acne things were gone off my face. And from that moment forward, my skin was like 80 to 90% better without doing anything else. And I was like, holy shit. So that was like a massive, I'm so happy I had that early on in my healing journey, because it really showed me the power of like somatic work. And like when you create safety, your body literally will just release stuff for you.
Oh my God. I have like fully got the chills. I love this story. Amazing. What are some of the other ways that you have sort of transitioned? And maybe we just like dive into like the male versus the female nervous system, because I think it is really important to talk through that and really how entirely different it is. And, you're coming up through your 30s in a day and age where we are starting to do a lot more work in women's health and longevity. And so let's talk a little bit about just the male-female nervous system, the differences, and the work that you're doing to help people understand that.
I think what I've loved about the nervous system is when we can really look at it through a lens of like evolution and biology, like everything kind of makes sense. So when you look at a man and a woman has the ability to create and bring life into the world. So we're the medium through which life gets brought into the world. Because of that, the way our nervous system learns how to create safety for us is very different. So whether you have had children, want to have children, or don't want to have children, your nervous system is oriented around reproduction and bringing life into the world, which means that you, differently than men, are going to be in a highly vulnerable state, potentially multiple times throughout your life as you go through pregnancy and postpartum. What this also does is it more socially attunes the female nervous system. So we have the like mother-baby relationship where we actually need to have a greater ability to read facial cues and to sense the nervous system state of our baby in order to provide like healthy, secure attachment for them. Like from a, ideal perspective, like we would wear our babies for at least 2 years after we give birth to them. We would be with them every single moment. And outside of that, we also need to have this more socially attuned nervous system in order to source safe relationships for ourselves. So when we're going into pregnancy and postpartum, we need to be protected, provided for. We need people around that we trust to give ourselves and our babies like the best chance at survival. So men don't have any of that pretty much because their bodies are not wired to create life. And this is where I think it's really cool. And we do see the like, provide, protect element that like a lot of people talk about in energetics, which I think is really cool. And we really see it in this nervous system way where like dopamine driven activities boost testosterone in women. Dopamine after a certain point in women actually depletes oxytocin, and oxytocin is our master neuroregulator, and testosterone and dopamine is more kind of like regulating for men. And so we see this like, yeah, I always envision it like children and women at the center and men like around us. And that's kind of what I picture. Like when a man is in touch with his body and his nervous system, like that there's like a natural impulse for him to be there for women, like in all of those ways. And so when we're talking about working with the nervous system, even just understanding that like at that, hormonal and neurotransmitter level, for us, we need oxytocin, which is connect, support, like orgasms, hugs, like, we love to say like women love to beat a dead horse. Like we love to just talk about the same thing over and over again with our friends. And that literally boosts oxytocin. For men, they need more action oriented, dopamine driven things in order to feel safe and like access vitality in their body. And the hormones and neurotransmitters that do that are literally different. So that's kind of, like at a broad spectrum, just looking at like these evolutionary biological purposes of male and female. Of course, we're going to be different. And that, infuses itself into our emotions, our psyche, the way that we relate. Like men don't experience relationships the same way that women do. And like that's obvious. Do they need more help in this day and age? Absolutely. I think a lot of men are like underutilizing their potential for healthy relationships, including with other men. But yeah, it's just like in our biology.
Yeah, it's so true. And to your point, like I do think like when men are attuned, they show up in a very different way for women than men who are not attuned to what's going on in their bodies. That's a great point. Let's talk a little bit about shame.
Yes, one of my favorite topics, funny enough. So shame for me is like it's been so much of what my work revolves around is like, I call it de-shaming or, like shame healing. And shame is a really unique emotional experience. It's different than every other emotion. So where we might say like, I feel guilty about this or like I did something bad, shame is I am bad. So there's like, it fuses with our sense of self and identity, and it causes us to over personalize things. It makes us feel like there is kind of, an inherent wrongness in us as a person. And for women specifically, our nervous system innervates all the way down into our cervix. So like our deep pelvis, it probably innervates into our uterus as well. We just have not had as much research done on the female nervous system. And so when we're receiving chronic cues of shame, it actually sends a signal of freeze to our nervous system. And that freeze literally gets sent all the way down into our digestive and our pelvic organs. And this is, one of one of the very underlooked like ways that like women struggle with like fertility, like cycle issues, then as they start going through perimenopause and menopause, it like really fucks your shit up because your body actually is not having like your communication highway of your nervous system and your organs and your brain is like not online. There's like actual somatic freeze there. And shame also, you know, from a like lifestyle perspective, it really holds people back from taking action, or they have these weird little stressy spikes of action that they take, but they can't sustain it. And because shame goes like, there's something wrong with me. And so when, you know, I try and start a business and it doesn't work immediately, it's like, oh, it's because there's something wrong with me and it's never going to actually work for me. And I'm like a unique butterfly and I'm just so weird and wrong, versus being able to say like, okay, yeah, that sucks. And how do you depersonalize it and actually allow for your body to access healthy action or healthy, you know, mobilization? And so a lot of people who struggle with chronic shame or internalized shame are quite literally in more of a frozen nervous system state that is preventing them from being able to like move forward with action in their life.
Do you think people know that it's shame?
No.
Right. Like, how do you get people to identify like the issues that you're having if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to like grow your business, and the issues that you're having that are keeping you stuck are related to shame? Like, how do people identify that?
I think what I've found, so specifically in entrepreneurs, I see it as two like major symptoms. So number one is, I would call it like identity incongruence. So you feel literally like a fraud, even though you have all of this evidence that you have like achieved good things. You can always figure it out. And this is actually what we call functional freeze in the nervous system world, where you're super functional and you are, you know, achieving great things. You're like showing up for friends. You're like the pocket therapist to all of your friends. Like you're doing really well. But underneath this is actually a lot of shame-driven freeze. And you literally feel like, unless you are the pocket therapist to your friend, you can keep a constant stream of achievements going, you'll die. Like that's what your body feels like. So that's one of the ways that I kind of map this out, is this like identity incongruence is you only feel that it's okay to be safe when you are in that active peak of achieving something or seeing that it's about to happen. And kind of as soon as the achievement happens or you've helped a friend or whatever it is, you drop again because your body, you don't see yourself in that way. You actually see yourself a little bit more like that is something I'm forcing myself to do instead of it being who I am. And so I kind of map that out for people. That is internalized shame. And then other, you know, a lot of looping thoughts that people have that sometimes they don't even realize they have is like, of course this is happening to me. It's always like this. I never, you know, it's never easy for me. So when we start getting into the extremes and all or nothing, that's a pretty clear sign. And the word should, that's like the language of shame.
Interesting. Yeah. I wish there was like a worksheet for this, where people could really identify like, this is what shame is. And this is how it's manifesting for me. What about for people that are trying, so as we're on the longevity podcast, where does that show up for people, you think, in terms of trying to, if they're overweight and they're trying to fix, you know, their health, and, you know, they're constantly trying to diet, or, you know, say like, oh, GLP is the only thing that's going to work for me. Do you work with women that are in that area as well?
Yeah, I work with, so I'd actually love to break this down a little bit. So there's, within the nervous system, we have different, I would call them like archetypes. So one of these archetypes I would call like a symptomatic nervous system, which is usually found in women, and usually found in women who are more highly sensitive, or I say like highly attuned. And so this symptomatic nervous system is often, it's like these women that have a lot of physical symptoms. They've been experiencing them for a long time, and it often feels like lifestyle stuff is not like moving the needle or like impacting it a lot. And to me, that is a very clear sign that there is like a nervous system, a deep nervous system component at play, because your body needs to feel safe in order to create and sustain any type of physical change, posture, weight, like hormonal shifts, like so on and so forth. And so what I would say to this as well is I really think we're going into like an era where we're going to see a pretty clear divide of women who choose body and women who choose like technology, synthetic, whatever you want to call that route. And I'm not a big advocate of that. I think that it can be really hard to bring your body back to homeostasis, and it can seem so great to like be able to take something that like will take the weight off of you, but it will be at the expense of your longevity, your cellular health, and your nervous system health. And likely what is actually happening is you've had a lifetime buildup of unprocessed shame, unprocessed stress responses in your body. And with women as well, when we go through our menstrual years, we can build up what one of my mentors calls like menstrual cycle debt. So when you're also not moving through the emotional, somatic, and spiritual cycles of your menstrual cycle, which we're supposed to, this also starts to build up and add density in your system. And this is also what I call like evolutionary mismatch. We are not living on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level, like the way our bodies are telling us. Like day one of my bleed, almost every time I have grief. There's like, it's well documented across cultures that women used to have like rituals for this. Like they would have a bath the first day of their cycle and they would cry and they would like let the grief go into the water and they would let it wash from their body. I didn't even know that I could only get pregnant for 5 days of the month until like my mid 20s, which is insane. So your body is housing all of this, and it creates a lot of distortion and dysregulation, and the way that your body even uses food is not the same as when you're in a well-resourced and regulated state. So I would like really say from like truly the bottom of my heart, like I thought so many of my health issues were going to be for the rest of my life, and they are not. It's hard work, but it is worth it because you also get to meet the version of yourself that was willing to confront these things.
I love that. Yeah. You talked about safe. I want to just come back to that for a minute because a lot of people find safety in chaos or in their trauma because that's what they're used to, right? So how do you get people to understand that what they think is safe, like if you come from a family that is like constantly yelling all the time and there's like always this intensity in the room, that is safe for people. How do you get people to break that chain of past traumas to realize like that isn't like naturally safe, or shift the nervous system from thinking that is their safety to actually your safety is not there?
I love this question. I like to map out for people what I call survival safety versus somatic safety, or you could also call it soul safety. So survival safety feels familiar, but typically with an edge, or there's almost like an element of a little bit of like dread to it. So, we're right around the Christmas holidays. I feel like this is like the perfect example. So like you're going home and you know exactly how you're going to feel irritated. And you know how you're going to feel irritated, and that feels predictable and comfortable. Your sister's going to say whatever, your mom is going to talk to you in this way, and your body literally like prepares for that. And that is survival safety. And this is what we experience in so much of our life. So like, for example, people will be like, I know, 3 black coffees on an empty stomach gives me the jitters, but I do it every single day anyways. It's like, okay, well, this is why your body is literally used to this form of stimulus and it's predictable, but it never quite feels like, okay, that feels so amazing. There's always a tinge of like dread or something. And then somatic or soul safety, this is where for women, like I think oxytocin, I think that there is almost like there's like a fluid strength that you feel in your body when you feel this form of safety. So this is like the ability to like, you sit back in your chair and you can take up space, your leg isn't bouncing around everywhere, and you're actually able to just like look, focus, pay attention to somebody. It is the feeling of, like I'm experiencing like period cramps today. Like, how do I nourish myself and how can I support myself, instead of, oh my God, I'm experiencing period cramps. What's going on? What do I need to do? What supplement do I need to take? It is a feeling of I don't have to do anything to cope with being present in my body, and I actually get to just sit here and be sensitized. That is somatic safety. That's being more in homeostasis, and that is what we get to as we do the nervous system work.
Okay, so I'll just use me as an example. I know my mom's not going to listen to this podcast, so I'm not worried about her hearing it. But my mom lives 10 minutes away, and obviously she's my mother. I absolutely love her. Her energy is very different, just say that, from mine. Mm-hmm. And so she does like heavy sighing as sort of like an annoying, like it's an annoyant, like sigh. Like even just the sound triggers me. Yeah. And, there's a lot of things. She's 83, dementia setting in, and I have to take her to all of her doctor appointments and handle all of her finances and all that fun stuff. We could talk about the sandwich generation for about 10 hours, but one of the things that I do, so as you said before, like I know that any time I'm spending with her is going to result in me triggered at some point to some degree. So on my way, on the drive over, I do breath work, and I keep telling myself, like, I get to take her to the doctor for 3 hours today. Yeah. I get to show her, take her food shopping or, whatever. So those are two little things that I do, but let's give people, maybe like another tool, or let's talk about those tools that they can do when they know that they're falling back on, or they're going to be triggered in some way and going through something like this.
Yeah, I love, so with like what you shared, I think that there's this like, what comes to mind is almost like a yin yang way of navigating situations and environments like this, because I also love this conversation because it's real. I think there's like a huge discourse of just like, hey, like, just don't talk to your family, because you don't get along. And it's like, hey, that's not real life. So how do you build the nervous system capacity to be around people who you love and who can also like really annoy you and can cause a lot of stress for you? So when I talk about the yin and the yang, I think that there is like being able to attune and feel we'll call it the quote unquote like positives, or like the non-stressful side of going into an experience like this. So she is your mom. You do love her. You do want to make sure that she can have, like a comfortable living experience, and you are choosing to like take on this responsibility. That's true. That is present. From a nervous system lens, we want to be able to interocept or sense that is like a, nourishing, positive, like neutral or pleasurable experience for us. And what actually can end up building up more sensitivity is when we don't also take time to acknowledge and kind of like give space to the other side of us, which is, a lot of people will maybe label these like low vibe emotions, which they're not, they're just different. The like annoyance, frustration, rage, anger, fear, shame, jealousy of other people that like aren't having to do that. And in our culture, especially if you came from the mindset and self-help world, we are so obsessed with always being positive that it turns into a form of suppression. And we are like not being fully human then, which is like, yeah, sometimes this is annoying. Sometimes I really don't want to do it. Sometimes I'm actually angry. Sometimes I'm so sad about seeing my mom like this. And there's grief and there's anguish and there's all of these other emotions that become, part of our shadow, which is like the suppressed part of us. And so this is really where a lot of my work is that I do with people. And so what I would say around this is, number one, like when you're on the way to Christmas or whatever it is, I love what you're speaking about is like doing the breath work, we can like acknowledge it. There's ways that you love being around your family and supporting them, and maybe just giving a little bit of voice to like, and I like also am feeling a bit of like apprehension or whatever, allowing that to exist. And then after you have, going with your mom somewhere, or you're at Christmas, taking some time, like truly like time for yourself, and actually asking your body, like, what else are you feeling about this that needs to have a voice? And it might be like you literally burst into tears immediately. It might be like actual tension or constriction in your chest. And it's like, literally let that happen. Let your body actually move into these different postures, maybe a collapsed posture, the fetal position. Let yourself cry. Let yourself like be dramatic about it essentially. And this is how your nervous system moves emotion through your physiology. And you'll actually feel better after, like almost that like, oh, okay, like that healthy emptiness that comes after you're like, I really felt that and I let that move through me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that. And I hope that I'm going to get this up before Christmas.
Yeah.
So people can use this for, the holiday time that is coming. And, it is I think a really hard time for people. A lot of people just do the obligatory, like, I'm going to go spend time with my family. We actually had friends come over on Thanksgiving after their Thanksgiving because they were like, I just need to be around people that don't irritate me.
Yes.
I will not name
that.
names. Let's talk about polyvagal awakening. So you said that discovering the polyvagal theory made your whole body make sense. Let's talk about what that means. What is polyvagal theory? And what was the biggest reframe that clicked for you?
So polyvagal theory was created by Stephen Porges, and it is kind of represents this shift in our understanding of stress and the human body. So before him, we thought that it was we were either stressed or we weren't. It was almost like a light switch. And the polyvagal theory literally gives us a spectrum that along the spectrum, we have different nervous system states that as we move, up and down or through these nervous system states, we experience different things in our body. And what we're supposed to be able to do when we are healthy and have well-resourced nervous systems is move through the entire range of the nervous system ladder or the spectrum and come back to homeostasis, like rest and digest, where when you're in rest or digest, your nervous system is not responding to any threat. So the energy you have available in your body is being dispersed through your digestive system, your brain, your hormones, your skin, your lymphatic system, your, memory, so on and so forth. So everything is kind of in its repair, regeneration mode, great for longevity, and not in, oh my God, okay, we're in response to a threat. So let's take, energy away from digestion and use that so that we can be in a high cortisol state and be ready to fight. So when I learned about the polyvagal theory, it was literally mapping out these different dominant nervous system states of rest or digest, homeostasis, where we, want to be spending most of our time. Then what a lot of people know as fight or flight. So you go into more of an activated kind of stress response. Then we have what's called dorsal vagal shutdown or more freeze, where the body actually goes, it's so overstimulated that it actually kind of drops. And this is where, in nature, we see animals playing dead, essentially. So and to me, I was like, oh my God, this is what anxiety and depression is. Anxiety is constant flight and fight response, and depression is dorsal vagal shutdown or freeze and just immobilization, apathy, hopelessness, so on and so forth. That's also where a lot of shame can make us live under the surface. And so I was looking at all this. And when you also look at on a physiological level, what happens in our bodies as we're in these different states. So again, homeostasis, digestion, brain, heart, lymphatic system, circulatory system, they're online. They're working together. It's like a symphony. Then as you move into fight or flight, so a tiger is chasing you or whatever, energy immediately gets pushed towards all of your survival organs and gets taken away from digestion. We're not focusing on lymphatic drainage now. We're not focusing on, producing oxytocin. We are moving into a high cortisol, high adrenaline state. And digestion actually starts to get deprioritized and turned off to a certain degree in order to allow you to be in this state. Then if we go even further and we go into more of the shutdown state, then digestion stays shut down, but all of our other systems also start to kind of go into this freeze mode. This is where we also see, a lot of autoimmune stuff. There is a lot of intense hormonal dysregulation here. And I'm looking at this map of the nervous system. I'm like, oh, I spend the majority of my time either hyper stressed out or feeling shut down. And I was like, oh, okay. So all of my health issues start to make sense now. If my liver is frozen, my uterus is frozen, my stomach is constantly scared something's gonna happen. You start to see how people that are having constipation and then diarrhea, it's this literally makes sense. Your body is responding to oh my God, I'm stressed, I'm under threat. And so I was like, okay, so just blasting my body with these intense pharmaceuticals that I got, like, yeah, probably just added more stress. And those are things I'm still healing from, of like liver damage from that. And I started to see, I was just like, okay, so like if I was to map this to my whole life, thinking that I was like, you know, really, I was literally depressed at 11 years old, like truly depressed at 11 years old. And I look back, I'm like, that was like not normal. And like, that's happening a lot more now because we're having multi-generations of, you know, we're bringing our moms and our grandmothers' nervous systems into our bodies that did not have access to the kind of support and healing that we do. And so like that, you know, 7-year-old Dana was also experiencing intense health issues. And then by the time I got to like 11 years old, I like was feeling the emotional ramifications of that. And so learning about polyvagal theory and seeing the real role that the nervous system has and how much it literally is the conductor of the body and how unsafe I felt most of my life, I was like, oh, and that just that validation of like, my body is not some vague organism that is just dysfunctional with illness that I can't get rid of, which is what I thought for so long and was really like reinforced by doctors and society. And especially being a woman, like there's so much shame and weirdness around, you know, like your lower stomach and, you know, like your breasts and like all of this stuff. So yeah, it was really just like, I would say existentially validating for me, where I was just like, I'm not wrong. Like my body is not responding in an incorrect way.
Well, I think you just validated a shit ton of people.
Great.
Well, okay, so great. Now they have this validation. Like, what do they do now?
Yeah. So
other than call Dana.
Yeah. The like really with every single person I work with, I always start with two things. Number one is like the nervous system education piece, which like people are already getting here. And I would really invite you to notice how validation feels in your system. And we actually want to start to bring somatic awareness to how fucking good that feels. And I really want you to like take a second to anchor into that. And then from there, I would move people through de-shaming, which is how do we bring somatic awareness to the shame that's in your body and create safety so that your body can start to process and alchemize the shame. So the two questions that I give to people to help them start to even conceptualize like de-shaming, because for a lot of people, we do have to start with the mind because that's where they're living right now. And we bring it down into the body is number one, how do you feel about how you feel? So if you're seeing yourself in like, oh, I'm oscillating between, you know, anxiety and depression, but it's actually like high threat mode and shutdown mode, what does it make you feel to even recognize this in yourself? Do you feel relief? Do you feel anger? Is that a, you know, sensation in your chest? Is it a temperature change in your body? Like I remember my body got really hot when I was like learning about this stuff because I felt so like agency came online. I was like, oh my God, yes, like this makes so much sense. So first, just making some space for how do you even feel about how you feel? And, you know, one of the things that was super healing for me was I was like, I really hate how I feel most of the time. And I really wish I didn't feel this way. And that was resonant. That was the truth of what my nervous system was feeling. And so we start there. And then the second thing is why would your nervous system believe it's intelligent for you to have these symptoms? Because your nervous system is always, always, always orienting towards survival. And this allows us to develop a relationship with our body where we see symptoms and discomfort as wisdom and communication, as opposed to evidence that there is something wrong with us. And that is like the core of de-shaming, is we lift the suppression on our body so our body can speak to us because it's no longer getting the signal of like, okay, you can speak to me if you are pretty. But if I feel like you're not pretty, I don't want to be connected to you, which is what shame kind of, you know, tells us in its way. So that second question of, you know, what is the intelligence in this? And I had to look and be like, my body was actually telling me through all of my symptoms the exact kind of support that I needed. I needed to like regulate my circadian rhythm, which for the first 20 whatever years of my life, I didn't even know existed. So my sex hormones were all over the place. I needed to not drink tap water, which had birth control in it, which was overburdening my already overburdened system. I needed to learn how to live in tune with my cycle as a woman. I needed to learn how to hold feelings in my body. I needed to learn how to feel all of the emotions I was told were bad, like shame and jealousy and fear and pain and all of these things. So that's where I would start. These 2D shaming questions. Allow yourself to sensitize yourself to how your body is like feeling the answer of these questions. And then come and work with me, because I will help you.
You will, for sure. I mean, you're already helping people just through this conversation. You talked about generational trauma. And I think it's really important because so many people don't really even understand what that means, and that it actually is a thing that you are inheriting, like your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents' trauma over the years. So if you have a grandparent who is a Holocaust survivor and they lived, through the Holocaust, or were in a concentration camp and they lived through starvation, chances are, as their granddaughter, you are having some sort of health issue when it comes to diet or obesity or, that type of thing. No. Do you, can we talk about that for a minute? Because I think it's really important for people to even just understand that.
Yeah. It's huge. And I feel like you, at least probably a lot of people in your audience as well that will listen to this have heard of or are quite well informed around epigenetics, or just, that our lifestyle can turn on certain gene expressions in our body, turn other ones off. And I think that this is a good example of that, where, for example, I only found out recently that my grandma on my mom's side, who I never got to meet, had a lot of health issues. I didn't even know that until recently. And some of what I was told about is oh my God, my body does that. And I was just like, wow. And so this is also, I would say, exacerbated typically for women a little bit. Over men in general just have way more physical resilience to things because they don't have the 28-day hormonal cycle. So overall they tend to be a bit more resilient. And yeah, so women specifically, your nervous system will deeply, deeply mirror the last 2 generations, your mom and her mom. And so their nervous systems literally get passed down to you. So whatever they have not been able to heal or resolve literally gets imprinted into your nervous system. And I think it's a really interesting reframe as well of, there can be a lot of these unfortunate jokes in society around not wanting to end up like your mother. And, or seeing yourself and seeing your mom and yourself as you get older and you never, wanted to be in this way or whatever. And most of the time it is actually these things that our moms or grandmothers did that were giant stress responses and nervous systems that had come from parents that were in the Holocaust or a war. My grandpa on my mom's side was in World War II. And so that stress turns on different gene expressions in the body. It also, and when we think about humans are always participating in evolution because our nervous systems are always collectively learning from each other. And then each new generation has slightly new adaptations. This is how evolution happens. So if we are coming from generations that were living through a lot of stress, poverty, being attacked by other tribes, being in war, all of this stuff, all of their nervous systems are communicating with each other to say, what is going to allow the next generation to be better prepared to be in war? Well, being hyper aware of your surroundings and possible threat seems like a really good idea from a nervous system perspective. But now we live in this world where, especially, in the US, Canada, Australia, and most of Europe, we're really safe for the most part in many ways. But our nervous systems are still hyper attuned or so highly attuned to threat around us because we've come from multi-generations of this. And why I think so many of us really struggle to actually relax is outside of just living in a fast-paced world. It is our bodies haven't kind of caught up to our environment yet.
Well, not only that, but I saw a really great graphic last weekend at Longevity Fest, which if you have the opportunity to go next year, it's probably one of my favorite conferences. This is the new tiger that is chasing you down the street. Yeah. And it is causing that nervous system deregulation on a minute by minute basis. So my kids, right, who have grown up with this in their hand, and when this is not in their hand, they're now sitting in school facing a computer all day long, their nervous systems of this generation that's coming up now, like kids, teenagers, people in their 20s also, I think are going to be suffering so much more than my generation, who didn't come up with that. We came up with a whole lot of other shit, but are you seeing a lot of that in your practice as well?
Yeah, even in myself. Like, I feel like, in many ways, I'm like, I run my business according to my cycle. My circadian rhythm is regulated. I'm like, deep in the process of like resolving my like autoimmune stuff. I have a great community of people around me. I'm quite well set up in my life. And like my biggest struggle is my phone and social media. And I mean, a huge part of that is like my business is through connecting with people on social media. And so where I have come to like my own conclusion on this is a couple of things. Number one, there is a company that I love called Daylight, and they're developing circadian friendly technology. I think that this could be a really great future for us, like as humans, especially those of us that like really care about longevity and health, where it's like at this point, it's not realistic for me to throw my phone away, to not be online, but I can also recognize like the being in front of blue light all day is like not doing great things, especially if you have a sensitive nervous system. The flicker of the computer and like the dopamine scroll just like further depletes your body. So circadian friendly technology, I ordered one of their tablet things, which I love. I noticed a huge difference. And I think they're in the process of developing like a phone version of that. So I think that is a great in-between option. And then the second part of all of this, it does take effort, but we need to recognize that things like going outside, eating family dinner together without technology is and should be the priority of where your nervous system focuses on. And so working together with friends and community, and this is where I think some people have shame about how much they use their phone and how addicted they are to it. Like, let's have open conversations around it so we can support each other, because what will override your addiction to your phone is healthy, safe connection with other humans in the real world. And that is what we need to prioritize. The more we have that, the more resilient we are. And I think also from like a stress perspective, when we focus on how do I add more good things in instead of just trying to take away the phone time, we'll do better with it.
And I think that's huge. And when I work with people, that is a big conversation I have. It's not about what you're depriving yourself of. It's all of the good things that you're able to add in to your life. And when you come at it from all of the good things I'm adding, as opposed to like, what can't I have anymore, and taking it away, yes, like family time, open conversations, dialogue, like all of that is a bonus. Like, don't look at it as like what you're losing. Look at it as like all of the things that you're giving it. I love that. I'm going to totally look up that company. And one of the things I realized, I was sleeping great in Vegas, which is like an anomaly. Like, who the hell sleeps great in Vegas? What I realized was, even though I was under, the fluorescent lights all day at the trade shows, I wasn't in front of my computer all day. And I know I have like a little bit of a filter on these glasses, but I don't think it's enough. And so when I'm home, like I get home, I'm in front of my computer all day. Again, I'm up at 3:00 in the morning. Yeah. And honestly, like, I think that's what it is. It's you're sitting in front of the flicker all day long. I was just, so we have our kids home from college this week, and I was just setting up my son's room, and on his desk next to his computer, I put the book that we got him when he graduated. It says, How to Break Up With Your Phone.
Oh my God, I love that.
The book. Read it while you're home.
Yeah. But I think the other part of the computer and the phone too, it's like interesting from a nervous system perspective, is it's such a narrow pointed gaze at one spot for so long. And that's that's what we would have been doing when we were hunting things, like from a physiological perspective. And so even being at a trade show, like, you're under the artificial light, but you're literally looking around, you're interacting with people, you are having real human connection. Your eyes are seeing a variety of things, and they're going into the distance, then coming close, then looking over here. So that's like a simple thing I say to people too, is like, even if you're sitting at your desk, take like sit back in your chair every once in a while and actually take the time to like look around your space, or like if you're in front of a window, like look out and look more into the distance. And it helps your nervous system get the signal like, okay, we're not in hunting mode right now.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that. So I'm moving my mom to a new apartment in her building, and the new apartment faces the front of the building, where right now she faces the back. There's nothing going on. She stares at, it's beautiful. It's water and trees, and it's a nice view, and she gets really beautiful sunsets. But the front of the building is like, she's constantly going to be looking out the window to see like who's coming up the driveway, and, you know, all of the pretty flowers out there. And, you know, even just as I was in that apartment, I kept thinking like, this could be so much better for her nervous system to be able to see this all day long. Yeah. And she's like, why do I care who's coming and going? I'm like, you don't worry about it. Like, I'm just happy that you're going to see all day long who's coming and going. But to that point, like, it'll be great for her, even with the eye movement, just to like continue to like look away from the TV. And you know, even if she's sitting all day in her apartment, I don't feel as bad about it, because she's going to get more stimulation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so important to, I think this is a great way to illuminate it, of just seeing the comings and goings of humans. Like we are, you know, like I love that, of just like, hey, like people are, you know, we're living, we're doing things, the world is working around you, and like feeling connected, even just seeing people coming and going from a building is like, it does make you feel safer in your body.
This is one of the things I love. You know, one of the things we talked about was this multi-generational gathering that you and I met at, right? And so it was like men and women from 19 to 56 years old, right? I think was the oldest person there. And sitting around a room, just listening to each other, hearing each other, seeing each other, and being there to support each other, whether it was, you know, the 30-year-olds talking about like what they need from the older generation, or the older generation hearing about like what are, you know, the 30-year-olds. What I love about your generation, and, you know, even my nutrition coach that I worked with a couple of years ago, she started talking to me about cycle syncing, and I was like, what is cycle syncing? Like my generation, granted, most of us are like hitting perimenopause right now, but we have no freaking idea what that even means, to be doing things differently during different phases of your cycle. And first, I love that we're having this conversation, because I think it's so important for, you know, women in their 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond to understand, because we're going to have kids and grandkids, and for them to understand, especially obviously the women, you know, men should also understand the female cycle. And I used to say that to when I had a business partner, I would say to her boyfriend, fiance at the time, if you just put her cycle in your phone, your relationship would be 80% better, because you would know that her freaking out today has nothing to do with you. Yeah. Like, you just need to know like when she is cycling. It will make your life so much better. So just be attuned to it.
100%.
But like, I love that, you know, the younger generations, and I will probably make my kids listen to this, or even start to understand what the nervous system being regulated truly means, you know, especially having two kids that have had, you know, post-traumatic brain injuries, but understanding like how that could impact them and their nervous system, right? Because one of them I know is dealing with the trauma of it. You know, the other one, while she thinks she's blocking it out, like there is still trauma there that she is going to have to deal with at some point, even if right now she's not dealing with it. And then, you know, having two girls, like, understand your cycle. And they do, like, they're using the apps, like, because they have apps. Like, we didn't have apps when I was growing up to even understand the cycle. What I had was a pill pack that told me when I was getting my period, which made it easy starting at 17. But knowing what I know now, the pill totally, you know, screwed me up for the rest of my life. So, yes, and I have a 18-year-old, and I'm like, there will be no birth control pill for you in your future. Like, there's either abstinence or there's protection. So,
Yeah.
yes. But really getting them to understand what the nervous system does and what it means to really be in tune with your cycle.
Yeah. I think that's it's I love that you're like bringing that to your daughters, because it is so like I have a younger sister, and she was telling me there was like a girl she worked with that was even younger than her. She was like 22, and she, thinks she has like endometriosis. She's been on, birth control for a long time, like, has had a lot of chronic stress. The first recommendation from her doctor was to literally get a hysterectomy, like get her uterus removed at 22 years old. No ask about like stress levels, no education around what birth control had done to her body or anything like that. And I'm like, it is so incredibly needed. And like one of the things that actually makes me feel like good about being on social media is I'm like, I hope young women see my content as well and are like asking questions. And because I think the other part of it too, and we don't have to go like so into this, is like, I know that when I was in university, I was at the beginning of a lot of what I might call like hyper liberalism around the female body. So like casual sex is empowering for you, just go on birth control, and like just real no honoring of like the female body or any of that stuff. And it has led a lot of women to believing that like, like birth control is like a really good thing, and they don't care if it messes with their body, or, just there's just like I see it as like, you don't like being a woman, and it's under this guise of like, I'm protecting myself, I'm this and I'm that. And I just think like that is you're so dysregulated if that's the way you're living. And so I love that we also have this opportunity to educate these younger generations that the best birth control is not having sex with someone who you would not trust to have a child with, just straight up. And I wish that that's what had been like put into my brain, that I've had to learn as I'm older, and that having your uterus your whole life is normal. Having a healthy uterus your whole life is normal. Like having a healthy period is normal. It is not normal to have insane cramps or like all of this stuff. And so, yeah, I love that you're bringing that into your daughters' lives.
Yeah, I want to say it was Sarah Gottfried that talked about the importance of our ovaries for the duration of our life, even after menopause. And just how many mitochondria are produced from our ovaries, even when they're, and that, like, to your point, it gets me so enraged. I have friends that are, in their 40s and 50s that are having partial hysterectomies. Like, oh, it's just my ovary. It's like, why are doctors not explaining that it's not just an ovary? Like, that ovary is going to help you live longer, better. Right? Yeah. It's not just about living longer. It's about living longer better, right? Yeah. And so when we talk about longevity, people are like, why do I want, my mom says this all the time, like, why do I want to live longer? It's like, it's not about living longer. It's about living longer better. What was really, and I haven't even done my takeaways yet. I'm going to try to get it in today for my Friday email. But one of the really big takeaways was women, and again, like, thank goodness there's so many advocates out there right now, like working to, help women for wellness purposes and longevity purposes. We're living on average, I think 25% longer than men, but our years of decline are longer than men. So like, while they're declining for 12 years, we're declining for 14 years. And it wasn't Sarah Godfrey, because the woman that talked about it was about to turn 70. And she's like, if I live till, 84, like, I am literally about to go into my decline.
Yeah.
If she's like, if I were a regular woman, however, yes. Like, what Brian and I and, Fostering Longevity and the Immersive are trying to do is to help people live better longer. Right? Yeah. Not just live longer, like live better longer. And that starts in your 20s and 30s. Like, I share this with my kids too. Like, the decisions you make today, whether it's drinking, smoking, partying all night, all of that stuff, you're going to look back when you're in your 30s and 40s and not necessarily be happy with the decisions you made in your 20s. So just remember, the decision you make today is impacting you every year from here forward. And so, I look back at my 20s, oh my God, actually my teenage years, like just drinking, absolute vodka out of a bottle and wondering why my entire gut was wrecked. And not one doctor ever said to me, like, do you drink alcohol? And how much are you drinking? Not
Literally.
one. Yeah. Not one doctor. Anyway, we can go down the alcohol rabbit hole.
It's like pretty wild. I've been going through a bit of a phase the last couple of weeks where I feel like I've had another layer of like, sometimes just looking around at the world and I'm like, what are we doing? And then it makes me know really specifically the kind of people that I want to be around, which, is a blessing and a curse in the sense of I'm like, it's a very specific type of person at this point. Which is great. Cause then when I'm around those people, I'm like, cool. Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, okay, like we're, circadian rhythm locked in. We're working with purpose. We want to be healthy. We value relationships. Like I'm not a man hater, like, things that are actually kind of hard to find a little bit like in this day and age. And so, but I really, I love this conversation has been really like rejuvenating for me. So I really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I this might be my favorite podcast I've ever recorded.
I love that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So, all right. What are your favorite biohacking tools that you still use today?
My sauna that I have right here. I'm obsessed with the sauna. Red light. I think, I would say actually my overall for like biohacking tools would be like lighting and anything that helps improve the quality of your water. Those would be like the two areas I would heavily, heavily invest in. As like, at the end of the day, like we can't escape light. We need water for a lot of things that we do. Get good filters. Wear your blue light blocking glasses. Get the Iris program for your computer that helps. It like reduces the blue light on your computer. It's called Iris. Check out circadian technology. Get incandescent light bulbs for your house if you can instead of LEDs. Sauna, grounding. I mean, I get spring water from like the world's freshest spring, which is amazing, like where I live. But if you can get something like that, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. What regulation practice do you swear by?
The fetal position. I think when you feel overwhelmed, you can really easily go into freeze. And, when you have a little bit of time, like let's just say maybe like 10, 15 minutes and you're like feeling really overwhelmed and kind of frenetic, actually go, or you start to feel like that, like, oh my God, like my body's shutting down kind of feeling. Literally go lay on a couch, lay on a bed, go into the fetal position and put your hands like on the back of your like occipital bones and kind of like the top of your spine and let yourself curl into a fetal position. Let yourself feel your hands. And when you will feel this, an impulse to move after you lay like that for a little bit. So like your leg might want to stretch out, your head might want to come back. And this is allowing your nervous system to complete like a little mini stress response instead of overriding it. And that is gonna then allow like this organic, okay, now I actually have like the capacity to like take action that'll stay with you more through the rest of the day. So fetal position.
What's a myth about healing that you'd love to debunk?
That regulating your nervous system is all about like being calm and like all the time. It is. And I think that this is where like a lot of people get confused because they're like, I don't want to feel anxious or like this all the time anymore. It's like, you're not going to. What you're going to feel is the ability to be regulated and mad at the same time, regulated and anxious at the same time, regulated and grieving at the same time, regulated and joyful at the same time. So that is what we're actually trying to do, is get essentially just like help your body feel safe to be in contact with your human experience without going into a stress response. That does not mean being calm all the time. It does mean being able to be present while you're experiencing like a massive range of emotional experiences.
I love that. I was listening to Jay Shetty and Chris Hemsworth yesterday.
Oh,
while I was in the shower. Nothing like listening to those two while you're in the shower. And Chris was talking about how, you know, instead of doing like a calming breath work or meditation before he goes on stage or has like an acting thing to do, he actually does more of like a quick energizing breath work. He's like, because I found that if I brought myself into this calm state and then something set me off, it set me off even that much worse. He's like, so I would actually bring myself into a heightened state so that I was in this more energetic feeling, so that if something did happen, I was already there. I was already elevated, which I find, you know, and then like instantly the image that came to mind was like Tony Robbins when he gets on stage, you know, and that energy that he comes on stage with. Not that I've ever seen him in person on stage, but I can only imagine like the energy in the room. Like he really like hypes people up.
That I love that so much. It's like, I think about that even when I go to the gym. Like if I've been like sitting in front of my computer and I'm kind of in like more of like a lethargy state, instead of going to the gym and like immediately like jumping into the workout, it can feel too intense. So I'll do like in my warm up, I do a little bit of like deep diaphragmatic breathing, which activates your system a little bit. And then it brings me closer to the activation I need to do the workout. So it's not such like an extreme jump.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you, like, what's one thing that actually works but feels too simple? And my answer to that would be breath work.
I think for me, the answer would be a hug. And it's when, you know, like breath work, like if you're alone, you don't have someone. But I remember, I guess it'll be like almost 4 months ago when I went through my breakup, and the guy it was like literally through a text message. It was like a very shocking, like it was like massive shock to my system. I had just been planning to like move to the city that he was at. Like it was like a wild shock to my system. And I was actually at a women's retreat when I received the message. It was like our last morning. And I, you know, received the message, had like a really shitty 5-minute conversation with him. I was like sitting by myself outside, just trying to like calm myself down. And I came into the room where all of the women were, and I like just like burst out crying, and they all came and hugged me. And there was one woman who led us through. She was like, okay, let's just like all take a deep breath in, a deep breath out. Everybody stay connected. And I like kid you not, that I felt my nervous system just like I could feel all of these other nervous systems around me, us all connected, so much co-regulation. And like I could not have asked for a better support in that moment. And I felt my body just do it. Like, just like literally like, okay, like this is, I'm safe. It's okay. And so I would just say, yeah, like if you're around someone and you can have like a long 10, 15 second hug and, you know, take a few breaths together and like let your system like feel that, it'll help you.
That's beautiful. It reminded me of a moment that I had that was very similar, where I just gotten off a really hard phone call, and I came back into a room where I was presenting to a group of 13 women, and I came in and I just like lost my shit, just started hysterically crying, and every single one of those women they all came up and hugged me, and afterwards the conversation was, thank you for being that vulnerable in that moment, because it really just let everybody else like shed whatever it was, what the ego or whatever it was they were holding on to be the powerful woman in the room. Like here I was like about to present and like just literally stood up there, tears streaming down my face, you know, and they were like, you know, you come across sometimes as like so tough and like a badass, and it was so beautiful to see the vulnerable side of you. It made everyone else relax.
Yeah. It reminds me of that quote, or I don't even know if it's a quote, but it's like when you like are your true self, you give others the permission to do the same. And it's so true. And like we need, like, that to me is what has made me the most boss, version of myself is like not isolating myself and not trying to like have a stoic exterior, but actually saying like, I can do hard things because I have this support and because I let myself feel it all.
I love that. I love that. If you can go back to a former version of you and give that former version some advice, what would you say to her now?
I think I would go back to the version of me that had just moved back to Canada after leaving Colombia, and I had like just started my nervous system business. And the advice that I would give her is to really like learn what her value is when it comes to men, and like just straight up like stop dating losers. Like just stop dating losers. Like they wreck your nervous system. They do not make you feel good about yourself. I mean, I had to go through my whole journey with that, but that's like probably an area I would look back and be like, if you focused on that a little bit earlier, things would be different.
You wouldn't have met me.
That's true. That is true. So screw that.
Right? I mean, Brian and I love to say all the time, like, if you can't look back at what has happened to you as sort of like a lesson that has led you to exactly where you are right now, which is exactly where you are meant to be, then don't bother looking back, right?
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. What do you see for future Dana?
This is a great timing of this question because I've really been thinking about it lately. I mean, in my business, I see myself really moving, and I mean, that's what I'm doing in 2026, like working with more women who have these like symptomatic, like very highly attuned nervous systems, and really helping them with kind of like the identity nervous system piece of like resolving recurring symptoms and health issues, and just like really learning how to like live well in like a female body. And so that's kind of like on the business side. I would, in the next 10 years, like I would really love to have kids. And that's like a really beautiful thing for me because I, grew up hearing a lot of stuff around, I feel like demonizing like motherhood and, just like being a career woman. And if I give that up, then I'm like, wasting my potential and all that. And it's very disconnected from my body when I was receiving a lot of those messages. And so now knowing that I want to have children and like feeling connected to that in my body is like a really, really like beautiful thing for me. So would love to have kids. I think like a lot of people, I'm also at that point, I'm like, I want to have like some land. I want to have a house. I want to have a garden. I want to have a place in my backyard. I can like shoot a bow and arrow and like live really well and hopefully find a place in the world where there's like people like us that are around and we can really like, form and have this community of people that hold similar values.
I don't want to use the word cult, but I think the whole tribe, okay, let's call it tribe, where like I think tribal living where you find your people and you live amongst them is, I mean, I see it as the future. Right, where you're finding, the people that you really truly resonate with and that share the same values as you, and it's multi-generational, and you're shooting bow and arrows together and spending nights in front of a fire and doing all the thing, waking up at dawn, and I don't know, I look forward to a world where that exists in the future and people are in those silos of, commonality, call it. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Like the hyper independent, like I was thinking about this the other day where I was like, what is stopping me from like starting to do this now? Where I'm like, because I have quite a few friends where we all think very similarly. I'm like, why do we all need to have it all like separate, in this way? So I don't know. Who knows what will come from that?
Right. So if I were to put together a women's retreat, which was multi-generational, and you were to be there as somebody who was a faculty, what is it that you would want to focus on and pour into people?
So for a women's only retreat, I think what I would love to facilitate is like a really nourishing, like oxytocin based practice where we like really actually feel in real time what it's like to feel your brain like push oxytocin down into your body, and map that all the way from your brainstem all the way down into like your cervix and your pelvic diaphragm and your pelvic bowl. And I mean, there's different practices, different ways of working with the nervous system where we can kind of like elicit that response. And then really like spending time feeling what it's like to like saturate your tissue and like your fascia with this oxytocin, and then have like a women's circle after that where we could, you know, share about what that experience is like for women, and just like normalize this kind of more like oxytocin based way of living.
I love that. Okay, we're gonna have to talk about this.
Yes.
All right, where can people find you? What's the best way for them to begin regulating their nervous system with you?
So I'm pretty active on Instagram and TikTok, a little bit on YouTube as of right now. And yeah, my recommendation, if you're like completely new to the world of the nervous system, start with Nervous System Healing 101. It's like a foundational course that I put together. So it'll take you through a lot of the education, like how do you start working with your nervous system? And if you have been seeing yourself and a lot of what we've been talking about, maybe more like having a highly attuned body, being a little bit more symptomatic, and just having like a lot of recurring stuff, then definitely check out. I have a live workshop I'm teaching in January called the Resource Women's Workshop, and then a 3-month program called the Underworld, which is all about learning how to do feminine nervous system regulation, really like thawing the freeze in the nervous system in the pelvis, and like really learning how to build capacity to move through and process a lot of these like quote unquote shadow emotions like shame and grief and anguish and helplessness and a lot of stuff that you feel when your body kind of feels out of whack. So those would be kind of 2 amazing ways to work live with me in 2026. And then yeah, the Nervous System Healing 101 if you just want the kind of foundational piece.
Dana, thank you so much for your time today. Again, this has just been so much fun. Love the conversation on every level. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Stay tuned for more.